sit. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory be forever.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good matter. Another one of Jesus' words were kind of ringing and running through my mind all this morning. The kingdom of heaven is like a great pearl, a great treasure. And someone should be willing to sell all that they have, their house, everything that they own, so they can acquire it. Because with this great treasure, you gain something far more worth something than the pearl itself even would be. But this pearl, this thing that Jesus offers, is salvation. It is far more worth than any treasure could possibly be. Any house, any job, anybody. Today, in the gospel reading, in today's gospel reading, we have numerous examples of people willing to risk it all. Now you got to think about these two individuals. There's two miracles that happen in this story. A few more, but the two of them that really point out in the story, right? First of all, it was Jairus. Jairus was part of the temple. And already Jesus had been causing turmoil and strife and everything else among the communities. So Jairus, when his daughter was dying, he had to gain all the courage he possibly could. And when he realized that his daughter was dying and that no one could heal her, it didn't matter what it cost. He was willing to give up his position. He was willing to give up who he was. He was willing to give up everything and be scorned in order to find healing for his daughter. His daughter was, in this fact, the great pearl worth everything to him. Now, when he came up and asked Jesus, another woman, now you got to understand, at that time, the Jews, when a woman had a flow of blood or was on her menstrual cycle, she was considered unclean. And anybody to touch her, they would become unclean. They couldn't even enter the temple at that time. But this woman had not been able to be healed. She was just bleeding and bleeding and bleeding, and nothing stopped her. For years, this woman just constantly had a flow of blood. And she too had to gather all the courage she possibly could muster. And I could just imagine, as people were pressing and pushing on Christ to try to get near him, how many people actually touched him? How many people actually brushed up against him? And not one of them gained any kind of miracle. But this woman, she actually got on her hands and knees, because it says that she went up and touched the hem of his garment, down here, the bottom, just so she could touch his garment, not even his flesh, just to touch his garment. And as soon as she touched it, she was healed. She was willing to give up everything. Scorned, she was willing to be scorned and ridiculed and whatever else it was, just so she could gain access to the Lord. And she went up and she touched his hand. And Jesus stopped. Now can you imagine? We have access to Christ. We have access to him fully. And this woman, all she wanted to do was just touch the hem of his garment. And really, she stole power from Jesus. I feel that power has left me, Jesus says. Peter's like, what are you talking about? There's like a whole bunch of people pressing on you and touching you and everything else. What do you mean? Who touched you? And Jesus is like, because I felt it. I felt it. And this woman, knowing she couldn't be hid, she admitted what she had done. Now, when this was happening, after she had acknowledged who Jesus was and Jesus acknowledged her, the people came from Jairus' house and said, Don't worry about it. Don't bother the master anymore. Your daughter's gone. Your daughter is dead. And Jesus is like, don't worry about death. Basically, in an essence, right? Don't worry about death. I'm coming. I got this covered. Obviously, I'm using my own lingo and the today's terms. But Jesus is basically saying, I got this covered. Don't worry. And when he entered into the house, everybody was wailing and crying. And Jesus says, don't worry, I've got this covered. And he went in there and he says, don't worry, she is only sleeping. And everybody started laughing at him. We have access to Christ. We have access to his power. We have access to everything that he is. Every bit of him. Sometimes it really amazes me how we often put, and I do that myself, I'm not going to put myself anywhere separate, because I've done it in my life too, but we often put Christ on the back burner for our lives. I'm too tired. I'm struggling at work. I'm just frustrated. My kids won't listen to me. I don't need to go to church. I'm just not going to go. I'm not going to go. And not only do you not go to church, but you kind of put your prayer life on the back burner. You kind of put your devotion on the back burner. And you sometimes put your spouse above everything else, your kids above everything else, your job above everything else. And lo and behold, before you know it, you're drowning in worry and sadness and depression. What is worth your soul? It's not a rhetorical question. What's worth your soul? Is there anything more important than your soul? I was talking to a friend of mine this morning and I said, if there is one time where you are supposed to be selfish, and I hate using that word, but selfish is the only thing I can use to think of, is when it comes to your salvation. Your kids aren't going to be there on Judgment Day with you. Your spouse, your brother, your sister, your parents. No one's going to be there with you. You will stand before the judgment seat of Christ alone, as his wife. Who knows who will be in front of me and who knows who will be behind me. But when I go up before the throne, I pray that I hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. To me, I am still looking for that great pearl. There's still things in my life I know that don't belong. I still like my movies. I still like the things that and I'm not saying that you're going to give everything up. But I'm also not saying that you shouldn't. All these people that give up the world when they go into the monastery, I give them all the credit in the world. But if you ask them, they're going to tell you, we're the farthest away from heaven as you possibly can be. You're probably closer than I am. That's what all these saints would be telling you. You should have never canonized me a saint. You should know you don't know what I was doing in the darkness of my room. But the people that we see and we go to an intercession, they gave up everything. That treasure was a great pearl that they gave up everything for. Because most of the saints that we have depicted on the icons, they were all martyred for their belief. Some of the new ones, yes, they died of old age. But the ones that really went through hell, like yesterday when we celebrated St. Demetrius, and today we celebrate his friend Nestor. Right there is a perfect example of intercession. Demetrius is in jail, in prison, and Nestor is about to face the champion of the arena, Laios. The champion. This guy, to be a champion, how many people do you think he'd had to kill? How many people did he end in the arena over and over and over again, people were terrified of this guy. And Nestor was going to have to fight him. And guess what Nestor did? He says, you know what? I don't care if he's the champion or not. So he goes to St. Demetrius, and he says, I'm about to face Laios. I need you to pray for me. Intercession right there. Right there is the prime example of intercession that we have. And St. Demetrius, go in my blessing, go and fight him. And Nestor killed Laios. Nestor was willing to give it all up. Even if he lost, he would have gained it all. Even if he would have been struck down by Laios, he would have found paradise that day. So again, I ask, what is worth our soul? What is worth our soul? Is any sickness, any disease, anybody worth our soul? Our soul is the most precious thing that you have. And it's the most precious commodity that Christ has. When he created the foundations of the world, he had Dimitri in mind. He had all of you in mind. And when he was hanging on the cross and he was dying, preparing to make his descent into Hades, he had us all in mind. Every one of us. For all the sins that we did, all the sins that we do, and all the sins that we ever will do, he had in mind. It's never too late to take that step forward and make a change in your life. Because our soul is the most important thing in the world, in the cosmos, in the universe, in all of existence. Today, as you prepare your heart, and today, as you ask forgiveness of the Lord for the things that you have done since the last time that you've received confession, prepare yourself and ask yourself that question. What is more important than my soul? And if you have the answer, and if you find something that's more important, please come and tell me. Because I haven't found anything yet. And I pray that one day that the Lord allows me to be able to sell everything that I have and everything that I own and give up everything that I find so important, that I will just completely be immersed in the glory of God. Every one of us has the potential to take the place on a church wall, just like St. Nicholas, just like St. Nectarios, just like all these saints. Every one of us has that potential. Every one of us. Do not fear death. Fear what comes afterward. That's what you have to fear. And if you're prepared, then there's nothing to fear. So may the Lord God protect us and give us the strength we need today, and let us glorify him always. Amen.